Well, howdy, y'all. It's your internet best friend, Danny. This is Market Explainer, America's #1 business news podcast. As always, I'm joined by my co-host. Well, hey, I want to move on to this next story. But before I do that, I want to tell you about our sponsor for this segment, Acre Gold. Meet the new store of value. It's the same as the original store of value. It is God's money. It's gold, people. Acre Gold sets you up. So as a seasoned investor or the first-time gold buyer, you can buy 2.5 grams of gold at a steady pace. $50, you can pick your tier, $50 every month, something like that. You subscribe. And when the time comes and you've accrued enough in your account, they'll actually send you 2.5 grams of gold. It's a perfect size for the first-time gold buyer or the seasoned investor. You can hit the link down in the description down below, and you can go to Acre Gold and get started today.
Very nice.
Very nice.
What is our next story? I forgot.
Our next story is, wouldn't you believe it? Can you, what the frick? WeWork.
This story made me so angry. It made me so angry when Danny sent it to me and I was like, there's no way this is true.
Okay.
And it made me so frustrated.
You know that scene in Office Space where they kill that printer?
Yes.
That's how this made me feel.
What?
Right?
And that's my point. Okay, so go ahead. Tell them what we're talking about.
WeWork has gone public via a SPAC, making Adam Nuemann, the former CEO of this company, which all it does is it takes long-term liabilities, and they take those long-term liabilities and they swallow them, and they shoot out short-term returns by buying up office space. This was a huge scandal in 2019 and 2020. If you go all the way back, I think we discussed this with our first guest, Matt Cox. This was a hilarious, effectively a hilarious scandal.
No, it wasn't a scandal. It was a scam. It was a scam. They were trying to go public in 2000. Yes, this is the same WeWork, folks. This is not a different company that rebranded itself as WeWork that took it over. No. This is the same company minus the guy that got kicked out, right? Neumann, right?
But he's still gonna. He still owns a big piece of it.
Of course,
he owns
we'll get to that in a second. Hold on. Okay. Give me a second, because we'll get to that pisses me off in a second. But this is the same company that tried to go public 2 years ago with a $47 billion evaluation in the same year that it lost $2 billion.
So what's $2 billion to a guy like Masayoshi Son, the main investor backing this company?
Okay, so let me paint this picture for you.
But by the way, they in 2019 they did try to go public. They put, I think it's called the K1 or whatever that sheet is that they come out with and say
they tried to go IPO, right? They tried to go IPO. Okay, they tried to go IPO. They tried to go IPO. An evaluation of $47 billion. And today they've taken $110 billion from the Asian company you were talking about, right?
Yep. Softbank.
All right. After they had lost $2 billion during that year,
between
which means they weren't going anywhere.
Right. And so here's the other thing. Here's a very interesting side note as to this story, very pertinent. They went public at a $9 billion value, which is just a squeech below what you would expect.
But look, they knew it was going to be, like, all indications, according to what I read, and they did this very quietly because of people like Danny and I talking about this. They didn't want this to go on for a week before they hit the market, right?
Correct.
That's why they went SPAC, right? It was a quiet deal that they made. Changed the stock ticker, bam, Monday, right? And the ticker is now WE, right? It's the stock ticker. So, nobody knew about it until it had already happened, because they didn't want to give people time to trash it and talk about it and yada yada. But what Danny said earlier that I said, give me a second and we'll get back to it, is this, and look, we're going to have to add an adult content onto this particular video because this guy's douchebag. This douchebag that led to the original failure going IPO in 2019 by the name of Neumann, this douchebag at that point was ran out of his own company, and part of that deal of getting ran out of the company, it cost him they gave him, I'm sorry, I don't even see it on my notes here.
1.7 billion was what they gave him.
$1.7 billion to get the hell out of a company he was unethically running, took his voting rights away, but did not take his stock away. Yeah, so as Danny said, they've made a guy that they ran out of the company a billionaire by taking the same company SPAC.
And along the way, he started selling off his other shares and stuff like that. Here's where this company went wrong, at least in my view, is this is a traditional real estate business. This is nothing new. And if there's one thing hate,
traditional, no, it's a scammy traditional. It's a subletting is what it is. But
so that's where I think their mistake is, right? Because the real asset in this world is holding something of value that is intrinsic, and real estate or land, for that matter, a building is intrinsic value. So their biggest mistake was they weren't buying that. And part of the scammy thing that Big Man is talking about is that Adam Nuemann was secretly buying up buildings by using money from friends, and he would do this really unethical thing where he would pay himself this huge bonus, I think, from WeWork. And then he would take that money, he would buy the building, and in turn then lease it back to WeWork. He went and trademarked the word "we" in his own name.
Yes, he did.
And then he licensed it back to his own company. So these are all ways founders...
License it back for a $6 million license. Not a... Hey, just give me this over here. I want to keep ownership of it, lease it for $6 million. This is why the guy's a douchebag. This is why, to me, WeWork should have failed and been replaced in true capitalist form, because this guy was doing this the entire time. The only reason you realize he is currently under investigation, because when they went into trying to go IPO in 2019, they're trying to prove that he knew that he was lying to potential shareholders because he was fleecing the company in this way. And the only way he got caught was they were running out of money. After the $2 billion loss, they were running on fumes in their bank accounts. They were trying to go IPO before the money ran out.
Right. And the crazy thing is, if you watch, there's a documentary on Hulu about it. And they basically say that like Adam Nuemann was just kind of a pretty wild guy to begin with, but a little more mild-mannered. And Masayoshi Son, who is a huge investor in Alibaba, the Chinese Amazon, if you will,
right? Yeah.
Which,
but more on the wholesale side than the Amazon side. But yes.
But the point is, well, they have verticals across the gamut now. But he was such an early investor, and he's a Japanese man investing in a Chinese company. There's cultural things there that make Japanese and Chinese people go, ugh. That's just, they don't like there's culture clash there. But he saw Jack Ma and basically said, you need to be a little crazier. And there's this theory out there in entrepreneurship and business, the world of startups, that it's only the crazy ones that succeed. And, you have to be like, Steve Apple, or you have to be like Steve Jobs. You have to be a dick to people in order to succeed, and I don't think that's true at all.
I think a lot of the perception of that comes from what we see in billionaires or soon to be trillionaires now. I think they became that.
I don't think that they were like that.
I don't think they were. Well, he's loony. Okay, he tried to name his kid a bunch of letters. All right, so I think absolute power corrupts absolutely. All right.
Well, okay.
And so I don't think that all of these people, like you see in Amazon case, Jeff Bezos, right? Everybody knows that photograph of him sitting at a desk with Amazon written across back when he was selling books or whatever. That looked like a normal guy. The HGH'd you know what I mean, bald-headed
He looks like a
Lex
super
Luthor
villain, yeah.
guy, right? Villain, does not look like a normal person, right?
No.
You don't get 30 years older and reverse engineer a body like that without something going, right? Crazy.
Yeah, okay, but when I have billions of dollars, I will do the same thing. Okay, but what I'm trying to get at is Masayoshi Son carries that belief, and he basically like was supposed to go meet with him, and he was taken, kind of breathtaking, by Adam Nuemann, and said, "Hey, I think they were asking for $500,000 or something." He said, "Well, what if I just give you 10 million? Can you go crazier? Can you expand faster?" And so let's just presume, I don't know, that Mr. Neumann has kind of sociopathic tendencies that were just latent, that were underneath the surface.
Sure.
And he was working every day to beat those back. And then one day somebody goes fishing and says, can you bring these to the surface for a lot of money?
And he admits that in this article. He does. Yeah. He says, I was taken advantage of. And this guy, Softbank, owns 80% of this company. Nobody's made their money back on this company. If you're thinking about investing in WeWork, know that there have been at least $110 billion, but it's probably closer to $200 billion invested to keep this company afloat, right?
Yeah.
And it just went SPAC at an evaluation of $9 billion,
right.
Which I'm not a mathematician, but I'm pretty sure that's still $190 billion short. Okay?
Short of where they started.
And I don't know about your investments, but my return on an investment, I don't know the math on that, but it's a long time before, right?
Yeah, I think maybe in your great-great-great-grandchildren's lifetime, you might be able to get some of the money back. That's just to break even. But what I'm trying to get at here is the big mistake they made was Adam Nuemann realized at some point that the real value was going to be in owning these buildings, and the fact that they don't own these buildings is the crime.
Well, he figured out that the real value was in not doing what his company was doing, was using the company that he was doing, right?
To bilk it for money.
So again, investment, right? This is now a publicly traded company, and when you start talking about investments and how companies make money, again, I don't know, as an investor, as an outside person looking at this as a stock investment, how this company still continues to make money in the long run. It can make money in a short run, right? If everybody's looking for office space and everyone's looking you could make some short-term money. But in the long run, you own nothing. You are subletting other people's assets.
Yeah, so here's the other thing. I think 2020 taught us that people don't want to work in their office if they have the option not to.
Right.
And the kind of startup culture, I think, there's a guy that we can all watch on YouTube, Doug DeMuro. In the middle of the pandemic, he started a business. And he said, I've thought, because after the, kind of things cooled off, and he said, we could get into an office. He's like, well, I thought of getting into an office, but the biggest problem is I started hiring and everybody's working from home. Mm-hmm. And I got one guy in Las Vegas. I got one guy in Texas, one guy in Florida, one guy in Connecticut. How do I get everybody in one office? So I think that this kind of the lean startup that used to be the bread and butter of WeWork. And when I've been to 2 or 3 locations that WeWork had in Austin. I don't want to work in it. I never saw the appeal of sitting at this long, like Game of Thrones table where I'm shoulder to shoulder with strangers who are like, I'm working on this life. I'm going to change the world with my app. And my app tells you when to take a poop. No.
Well, those guys are at coffee shops. But here's the deal. I think it boils down to we have been fed our entire lives this dream, this American dream of you in a big office, right? Big corner office with a nameplate on the door or whatever. We all want to own our own home, and we all want the white picket fence or whatever. And I think that's where it comes from. I think people feel, especially Generation Xers and a part of millennials feel if you don't have an office, you're not successful. And that takes redefining success, right? Because that prestige, right? Think about all the 80s TV shows and all the 80s movies and early 90s movies or whatever. If you were successful, you wore a suit all the time, you went to your office, or you had your own building, you had your own whatever, name on the side. It's the whole thing, right? And I think people still feel like, if I'm working from my home in my pajamas, am I successful? And it's more about perception than reality.
And here's the other thing about perception versus reality. People have to start contending with the reality that money's fake, but that's a different conversation.
Well, no, success, look, you can be a stay-at-home mom or dad, work from home in your pajamas, and still make $120,000 a year.
And that, to me, is more successful than someone who makes 120 grand, gets in their car, drives 25 miles
for an hour.
Yes. And then, I have people in my family, and they said I would spend 3 hours a day to get ready to go to the office, drive to the office, drive back. That's 3 hours of my life I'll never get back. That's that's 5 days a week.
Yep.
And that's too much time. That's 15 hours a week I'm losing. Why? And when I can just wake up in the morning, put together a modest breakfast, sit in front of my laptop, do the job, take a lunch break on my couch, watch television, or do whatever. Or
watch an episode of Netflix, go back to work, right? And
whatever
and
it is you want to do. And I know people who are saying, not only am I never going back to my office, if my company says you have to come back into the office, I'm out.
Absolutely.
I'm not. So part of what we're seeing with Great Resignation, the other things is office space is not going to have the same value that it used to.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, I mean, how is Sam Zell doing? Has anyone heard from Sam Zell recently? He's America's largest office space owner. In 2019, when this scandal was going on, he went on Fox Business or CNBC and was saying, I love this business. People are always going to have, and he said this, it was like one of those things where you say, I'm never going to get struck by lightning as you're getting struck by lightning.
Well, nobody could see what 2020 brought, right?
Yeah.
At the time, you can only make assumptions based on what you know, right? Nobody has a crystal ball. Everything can change tomorrow, and obviously 2020 brought out a bunch of change. Now, how that works out, I think office space still has its place. I think, but in a very different form. I don't think you have, I'm going to come rent your 2 floors because I've got 200 employees, right? And all. Right. I don't think that has any value, but there's definitely value in space.
Here's what I think is going to happen. I think a lot of large companies will have an office that is designed to house 30% of their workforce, no more than 30% of their workforce, and they will have a quarterly or, there's flex desks. It's going to be like WeWork. And one of WeWork's verticals was designing spaces for other companies. And I do believe that might have a potential future because
in the design.
Big corporate America doesn't understand how to design a flex space, and they can still make money designing those spaces for people. And that might have some value because these big, I don't think, Adobe, I don't think that Oracle, they're all going to get rid of their office. But I think what's going to happen is if you live where the company is headquartered, you come in every 3 weeks, every 2 weeks, and you have a certain round of meetings, and that's that. You go home.
Well, I hope they don't even do that. I hope there's a couple of projects here in Austin with all of these buildings being built and cranes everywhere, and you know what I mean? That old joke.
Flipping Apple's space was gnarly.
Well, they've already, in some of these building spaces, converted, because now these are buildings being built, so it's a little easier than a building that's already existing, but they've already converted some of these that was supposed to be commercial space into residential/commercial, where floor 1, 2, and 3 are being built as condos. Building 3 and 4, or level 3 and 4, are going to be office space in some sort by company, and then building 7, 8, and 9 are going to be residential condos, and then so they're branding these, and then obviously key cards, you only have access to certain floors if you only there's security involved, but you can design that in some of these places where maybe you have what was originally this big office building you turn floor 1 and 2 into condos, or 2 and 3, and then 8 and 9 and whatever.
So to me, there's a lot. I mean, even the Apple building that they're building off of Palmer, in Austin, North Austin, there's a hotel now, right?
Right.
So, and it probably just for zoning and legality is easier to call it a hotel and just have a separate building that's a hotel.
Right.
And even though Apple probably owns the hotel, and it's
good for them.
And
they learned it from the NFL. NFL, every time they build a new stadium now, is building a stadium out in the middle where there's no one, because they want to own everything around the stadium. They want to own the restaurants around the stadium. They want to own the hotels around the stadiums. They want to own the entire process of you going to see an NFL game. Why shouldn't Apple, Google, all these others that are building out these complexes?
It's not just that. We're going to have staff coming in from other states, other cities, other parts of the world to this location. We can now house them. And then, because once you solve that problem, it's as simple as the logistics is as simple as getting somebody to get on a plane once a quarter to discuss a certain thing. They take a round of meetings for a week at the Austin building, and then they go back to wherever the heck they came from. And they're doing their job in Connecticut or whatever.
You can expand that all the way out. If you're building a campus, why don't you build a couple of condo buildings on it and house certain employees, right? All the time.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
This is a perk of moving your family here. They stay in the condo for the first year, right, until you get your feet, whatever
it is.
And again, that all on property they already own, so the cost of that becomes next to nothing.
Right. And so I think that we're going to see corporate dormitories and these kinds of things. And that's where WeWork is going to be at a disadvantage, because they didn't own the buildings. If they had owned the buildings, once you own the building, there's a little bit of flexibility to, I think anyway.
I'd be surprised if WeWork's not zero in the next decade. I don't see it. I don't see it lasting the next 5 years, much less the next decade.
No, and I think JLL or HFF, I think those companies actually merged, or somebody comes up and buys them because they have these leases, and then somebody is going to turn around and try to own the buildings that these leases are in. I think that's what if I was them. Or
piece it apart like the old school 80s and sell it back to the people that actually do own those buildings. Say, hey, that's true too. You have people that are already here. Give us X. We'll sell you the lease, right? And just go back to the way it's always been, which is directly to, the owner. Yeah. Why not, right? That's what I would do. If I was coming in and this company in the next couple of years just fails, I would come in, buy up all their leases for next to nothing, and then sell them back to the owners of the property. Be a middleman. You'd walk away with millions and millions, if not billions. Yeah. And everybody'd be happy.
All right, well, I'm going to go get a double-breasted suit and, a really wide silk tie. And we'll do that. And I'll drive a Lotus Esprit.